The old cinema ticket slipped gently from the book onto the wooden floor, its edges worn soft from years of hiding between forgotten pages. Eleanor bent down slowly, picking it up with trembling fingers, her heartbeat quickening as the faded ink whispered a memory from 15 years ago. It was just an ordinary Wednesday evening then, popcorn and laughter, with Henry's shoulder brushing lightly against hers in the darkened theater. Such a small thing. Yet she'd replayed it countless times, wondering what might have happened if she had leaned just a little closer, spoken a little softer, been just a little braver. Standing alone now, holding that ticket like a precious secret, she softly asked herself, "Does he ever remember it the way I do? And you? Have you ever held on to something small, something ordinary yet impossibly precious, silently hoping someone else remembers it too?" Eleanor Reynolds always believed in the quiet, delicate rhythms of life. Days that slipped by unnoticed like gentle waves washing onto the shores of Small Harbor, Maine. At 39, she had built a world tucked neatly inside the faded bricks of an old bookstore on Harbor Street, its wooden shelves filled with novels and memoirs, their pages yellowed by time. Every morning, Eleanor unlocked the doors, allowing the scent of salt air mingled with worn paper to drift inward, whispering comfort and familiarity. Her days passed quietly amid whispers of turning pages, the murmurs of customers, and the soft hum of a vintage radio that stubbornly played music from the late 90s, as if refusing to acknowledge the passing of years. Yet behind this gentle exterior lay a heart quietly aching, a soul marked by something left unfinished. Eleanor had long mastered the art of silent yearning, carefully guarding a love she'd harbored for her closest friend, Henry Cooper, since their early 20s. She knew Henry, better than anyone, understood every subtle shift in his mood and had seen the seasons of his life change and flourish. Yet he remained blissfully unaware of the quiet storm within her, a love tucked away like a fragile keepsake, too precious to risk being broken. Small Harbor, her lifelong home, mirrored Eleanor's own quiet existence. It was the kind of place where people knew each other's stories without ever needing to speak them aloud, where autumn leaves turned gold and crimson, blanketing cobblestone streets in soft whispers of nostalgia. Here, life moved slowly, comfortingly predictable, the sort of place where secrets seemed to hold themselves gently in corners of cafes and beneath awnings of old porches. Every day, Eleanor moved through this peaceful town, smiling warmly at Grace, the elderly cafe owner who always had coffee waiting, laughing softly at Lucy's teasing insistence she finally tell him how you feel, or patiently listening as Sarah, her lively young employee, recounted youthful heartbreaks and dreams. Yet, as the day waned and twilight bathed the town in hues of violet, Eleanor returned alone to her small home overlooking the harbor, where silence felt loudest. She would sit by the window, watching lights reflect softly upon darkening water, asking herself quietly, "Is this all there is?" And somewhere deep down, she longed for the courage to change the gentle course of her story. Have you ever found yourself quietly wondering if life held something more for you, if you just found the courage to speak your truth? On a Tuesday afternoon, with sunlight filtering gently through the lace curtains of her bookstore, Eleanor sat quietly, meticulously cataloging a stack of newly arrived vintage novels. Her slender fingers brushed the faded covers tenderly, as if she could absorb the stories hidden within their worn pages. It was precisely in the middle of sorting an old copy of Little Women onto a shelf that the bell above her shop door chimed, softly, signaling an unexpected visitor. Eleanor looked up with a mild, welcoming smile, only to find Lucy standing in the doorway, holding a pale envelope in her hands. Lucy's expression was cautious, perhaps even apologetic, as she stepped closer. "This came for you," she murmured gently, placing the envelope onto Eleanor's desk as if it were fragile porcelain. Eleanor felt something tighten in her chest, a quiet warning from deep within herself that whatever lay inside would unsettle the gentle rhythm she'd built her life around. She stared at the envelope, her name elegantly written by hand, and knew instinctively the handwriting belonged to Henry Cooper. For a moment she hesitated, as if delaying the inevitable could somehow preserve the calm she'd carefully maintained. She traced the letters softly with her fingertips, recalling countless notes and birthday cards he'd written her over the years. But this felt different, weighted somehow, as if every unsaid word between them had finally found a way to be acknowledged. Slowly, Eleanor slipped her finger under the sealed flap, breaking the gentle paper bond with a soft tearing sound that echoed loudly in her silent store. Inside was a simple, elegant card, cream-colored with gold trim, formal yet quietly beautiful. It was an invitation, Henry's name etched beside another that took Eleanor's breath away. Anna Morgan. Eleanor's breath caught sharply, her heart faltering. Anna had been Eleanor's friend years ago, a bright-eyed, confident girl whom Eleanor had quietly admired and supported through their shared school days. But they'd drifted apart naturally, as friends sometimes do, becoming merely polite acquaintances, exchanging greetings in the market or brief smiles across crowded cafes. Yet now, suddenly, Anna's name held a significance Eleanor had never anticipated. She was marrying Henry, Eleanor's Henry. The bookstore suddenly felt smaller, more confined, the sunlight less comforting. Eleanor stared blankly at the invitation, words blurring, her carefully guarded world gently crumbling around the edges. She had always known this moment might come, yet nothing could have prepared her for the quiet devastation of seeing his name bound so permanently to another woman's. Lucy reached out hesitantly, placing her warm hand over Eleanor's trembling one. "Ellie, are you okay?" she whispered gently, her voice laced with concern and compassion. Eleanor nodded slowly, forcing a small, reassuring smile, though her throat tightened painfully with every silent heartbeat. "Of course," she managed softly, trying to sound composed. "It was always bound to happen, wasn't it? He's been part of my life as a friend for so long. I suppose this just makes it real." Yet deep inside, Eleanor felt an ache she hadn't allowed herself to fully experience in years, a sharp, undeniable awareness that all those years of silent love and quiet yearning had culminated in a moment she never dared prepare herself to face. 1,000 memories flooded her mind, tiny moments she'd carefully tucked away. Henry's laughter ringing through autumn afternoons, his shoulder pressing gently against hers during quiet walks along the shore, the reassuring warmth of his hand, holding hers briefly, kindly, yet never more. Holding the invitation delicately, Eleanor knew she would attend his wedding. Not because she could bear to watch him promise forever to someone else, but because standing at a distance, quietly witnessing his happiness, was perhaps the only way she could finally learn to let go. Eleanor took a slow, steadying breath, finally meeting Lucy's concerned gaze with quiet strength. "It's all right," she whispered, the words more to convince herself than anyone else. "I've always known where I stand." But deep within, a quiet, relentless voice asked, "Have you truly made peace with never telling him how you've always felt? Have you ever received news that quietly unraveled the careful equilibrium of your world, gently forcing you to confront feelings you'd always hidden away?" Days passed quietly after the invitation arrived, yet Eleanor found herself moving through the hours with a subtle, persistent heaviness. It wasn't sorrow exactly, more a lingering sense of loss, the realization that something she'd always hoped for quietly, secretly, was now forever out of reach. Her routine remained unchanged. The bookstore continued welcoming its gentle stream of visitors, and her interactions with neighbors remained kind and warm. Yet inside, something had shifted, leaving Eleanor adrift in a world she had once navigated with comforting familiarity. One rainy afternoon, seeking distraction from the quiet ache within her chest, Eleanor began organizing boxes of old donated, books that had long sat forgotten in the back storage room. She knelt beside the dusty stacks, each title bringing forward forgotten memories. Her fingers brushed softly over faded covers, tracing stories she'd cherished and those she'd never known. At the bottom of one box, tucked between a dog-eared paperback of poems and a battered atlas, she found a worn notebook, its dark blue cover frayed at the edges, familiar yet distant. Eleanor's heart stilled as she recognized Henry's handwriting, unmistakable even after all these years. She hesitated, fingers hovering uncertainly above the journal's faded cover, unsure if she was ready for whatever lay inside. But curiosity, a gentle, irresistible pull, guided her hands as she carefully opened the first page. Henry's neat, careful script sprawled across paper yellowed by age, each sentence penned with an openness she had rarely witnessed from him directly. Slowly, Eleanor turned pages filled with notes about mundane days, trivial worries, and youthful dreams, until she reached an entry dated nearly 17 years prior, when they were both barely adults, stumbling through life with shy courage and uncertain hope. It began simply enough. Today, Ellie laughed, really laughed. It felt like sunshine pouring into the room. I wish I could bottle that sound and keep it forever. Eleanor's breath hitched, her heart tightening as she absorbed his words. He had noticed her laughter, found something precious in it, treasured it enough to commit it permanently to paper. Her eyes blurred slightly, but she continued reading, her fingers trembling as each line brought her deeper into the quiet heart she'd thought she knew so completely. She turned another page, and the words there nearly stopped her breath altogether. Sometimes I think about Ellie as more than a friend. I picture her sitting beside me, holding my hand in that easy way she has, as though we've always belonged together. But then I catch myself, because friendship with her is already more than I could ask for. To risk losing that for a feeling she might not share is something I can't bear. So, we'll always just be friends, and maybe that's enough. Eleanor stared blankly at the faded ink, the room around her suddenly feeling too small, air too thin. She placed a hand gently to her chest, feeling the steady but rapid beat of her heart, her mind racing. He had felt something for her, something beyond friendship. All those quiet moments, subtle gestures, hidden glances, each held more meaning than she'd ever dared imagine. She leaned back, the notebook still open in her lap, feeling an odd sense of both profound relief and quiet devastation. Relief, because she had not imagined the delicate threads connecting them all these years. Devastation, because those fragile possibilities had quietly slipped through their fingers, lost to silence and caution. Eleanor thought of countless instances when she had nearly spoken her feelings aloud, only to retreat into silence. She remembered clearly the night her mother had passed away, the ache of grief so immense she had longed desperately for Henry's arms around her. She had wanted him, there, yet something within her had held back, fearing vulnerability, fearing rejection. Now, reading Henry's hidden words, she realized he'd quietly wrestled the same fears. Suddenly, every unspoken conversation, every restrained touch, every careful avoidance of deeper conversations made heartbreaking sense. They had both been protecting their bond so fiercely that they'd never allowed it to evolve into something more. The sound of rain pattering gently against the bookstore windows drew her attention outward, reflecting Eleanor's own quiet melancholy. She gazed out into the soft gray afternoon, suddenly wondering if Henry had ever regretted the silence between them. Perhaps he had written more, hidden deeper within these pages, truths he'd quietly buried alongside his youth. Eleanor gently closed the notebook, her fingers lingering on its cover. Her heart felt raw, exposed, and yet lighter somehow, as if the discovery had finally granted her permission to grieve openly for what might have been. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine an alternate path, one where either of them had been brave enough to step forward. Yet reality pressed in swiftly, reminding her Henry's wedding was just weeks away. She stood slowly, clutching the notebook close, knowing she needed to return it to him. Perhaps it was too late to change their story, but maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to finally speak the quiet truth she'd carried inside for far too long. Yet as Eleanor stepped back into the softly lit bookstore, one painful question lingered. Would she find the courage, or would silence claim her again? She never expected the truth would begin with a journal hidden in forgotten memories. In the days following her discovery of Henry's journal, Eleanor found herself living between two worlds, the familiar reality of her quiet bookshop existence and the gentle yet overwhelming world of memories she'd long tried to set aside. She had always believed memories softened with time, faded into gentle recollections without the power to wound or unsettle, yet now, each remembered glance, each fleeting touch or unfinished conversation seemed sharpened, vivid, as if waiting patiently for the chance to haunt her anew. She would sit at the back corner of her bookshop, gently fingering pages of Henry's old journal, her heart skipping softly at every carefully penned word. The bookstore became a quiet refuge from the unsettling emotions that churned within her. Feelings she'd always known existed, but had carefully tucked away behind the reassuring walls of routine and quiet resignation. One afternoon, feeling restless, Eleanor left the shop early, drawn out onto the familiar streets of Small Harbor. The salty breeze from the sea whispered gently, carrying faint echoes of their youth, of laughter shared on summer evenings and the scent of bonfires on the beach. Her steps led her instinctively down narrow lanes lined with cottages, toward Grace's cozy cafe. Grace met her gaze knowingly as Eleanor stepped inside, her wise eyes seeming to read every unspoken word Eleanor carried within. She guided Eleanor gently to their usual corner table, bringing hot tea without needing to ask. "You've been quiet lately," Grace finally observed, her voice gentle yet firm. Eleanor traced the rim of her teacup, contemplating how much to reveal. "I've found something that reminded me of the past, Grace," she murmured softly. "It's brought up feelings I've tried hard to leave behind." Grace studied her quietly, empathy softening her features. "The past never truly leaves us, Ellie. It waits patiently until we're ready to face it again. Perhaps you're finally ready." Eleanor considered this, feeling both comforted and overwhelmed. Grace reached out, squeezing her hand gently. "Sometimes life offers us chances to revisit unfinished chapters. Perhaps this is yours." Later, Eleanor walked slowly toward Lucy's small cottage near the harbor, the journal tucked carefully in her bag. She hesitated outside Lucy's door, heart fluttering nervously. Lucy, upon opening the door, immediately sensed Eleanor's quiet urgency. "Come inside," Lucy murmured warmly, concern softening her eyes. Inside the small, sunlit kitchen, Eleanor placed the journal onto Lucy's worn wooden table. As she explained softly about finding Henry's words, Lucy listened intently, her expression thoughtful, quietly sympathetic. "Eleanor," Lucy finally said softly, "you both carried this secret for so long. Perhaps it's finally time to acknowledge it, to free yourself from it." Eleanor sighed, the quiet ache within her chest expanding slightly. "But his wedding. I can't disrupt his happiness now." Lucy leaned forward gently, her voice firm yet kind. "Eleanor, this isn't about disrupting his happiness. It's about finally acknowledging your truth so you can let go. Sometimes honesty isn't about changing the past, but about allowing ourselves peace." Eleanor left Lucy's cottage deeply contemplative, her steps leading her unconsciously toward their old schoolyard. She stood quietly before the oak tree where Henry had once jokingly carved their initials. Her fingers traced the faded letters tenderly, the bark rough beneath her touch, memories of simpler days whispering around her like soft autumn leaves. Unexpectedly, quiet footsteps approached. Turning slowly, Eleanor's heart stilled, seeing Henry himself walking toward her, a stack of books in his hands, presumably materials for his history classes. His expression softened immediately upon seeing her, surprise mingling gently with pleasure. "Ellie," he murmured warmly. "Didn't expect to see you here." She smiled faintly, voice gentle but unsteady. "Sometimes I wander back, remembering." His gaze softened further. "I've done the same." For a moment, silence stretched softly between them, filled only by gentle murmurs of the wind. Finally, gathering courage, Eleanor carefully reached into her bag, withdrawing his old journal. "Henry," she whispered, "I found something you wrote many years ago." His expression shifted subtly as he recognized the journal, eyes darkening slightly, with quiet vulnerability. "You read it?" he murmured, voice quiet. "Enough," Eleanor replied gently, heart fluttering nervously. "Enough to realize we both carried something unsaid for years." He stared silently at the journal for a long moment before exhaling softly, eyes shimmering with emotion. "I always wondered if you'd ever see it. There were so many times I almost told you, Ellie, but I didn't want to risk losing you." Her heart tightened gently. "We both did the same. We chose silence over risking the friendship we cherished." Henry nodded slowly, quiet regret shadowing his eyes. "And here we are, still carrying those quiet regrets." They stood silently beneath the old oak tree, the shadows lengthening around them. Eleanor finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if we'd been braver?" Henry's eyes met hers gently, honesty, raw in his voice. "Every day, Ellie. But sometimes life chooses paths we can't change." Eleanor nodded softly, feeling a tender ache. Maybe it's time we finally allowed ourselves to grieve for what we lost. He smiled faintly, sadness woven delicately within it. Perhaps that's exactly what we've needed. In the days following this meeting, Eleanor found herself quietly reconnecting with old friends, many who had moved away from Small Harbor yet returned for Henry's upcoming wedding. Each encounter gently revealed small truths she'd overlooked, details she'd quietly dismissed in the fear of acknowledging their meaning. She visited Sarah at the bookstore one morning, where the young woman brightly recounted snippets of conversations she'd had with Henry over the years. "He'd always ask about you, Eleanor," Sarah admitted cheerfully. "About what books you were reading, or if you seemed happy. I always thought it was just friendly conversation, but looking back, maybe it was more." Eleanor listened quietly, her heart tightening gently with each revelation. Later, walking slowly toward the pier, she wondered how she'd missed these subtle signs for so long. She met with old friends from school at the local diner, smiling gently as they shared memories of youth. Someone mentioned how Henry had often watched Eleanor quietly during school dances, never daring to approach, but always quietly observing. Each small anecdote layered gently upon Eleanor's heart, a tapestry of quiet moments she'd never fully recognized. As days passed, Eleanor felt herself standing delicately between the past she'd always carried and a future she'd never dared imagine. Her heart quietly struggled. Should she speak now, risk disrupting Henry's new happiness for the sake of her own quiet closure, or silently hold her peace forever, preserving the gentle friendship they'd carefully maintained? In her quiet cottage, surrounded by gentle darkness, she opened Henry's journal once more, reading softly aloud passages she'd nearly memorized. She lingered especially upon his words from their youth. "Ellie laughs like sunshine. I wish I could hold on to it forever." Her heart squeezed softly, understanding fully now the quiet depth of emotion he'd once felt. Eleanor sat in silence, the quiet weight of Henry's upcoming wedding pressing heavily upon her. She realized with gentle clarity that acknowledging her feelings was not selfishness but honesty. She could choose silence as she'd always done, or she could finally speak her quiet truth, not to alter his path, but to find her own peace. And as she quietly closed the journal, Eleanor knew with soft certainty it was finally time to speak, even if just once, even if it changed nothing but the quiet ache she'd carried for too long. As Henry's wedding approached, Eleanor found herself increasingly lost in quiet contemplation, each day bringing new waves of bittersweet nostalgia. The quiet town of Small Harbor seemed to sense her quiet turmoil, holding its breath gently, alongside her as she walked familiar paths, each filled with memories of Henry. The whispers of past conversations and quiet laughter echoed softly in every corner she turned, making it impossible to ignore the silent ache that pulsed gently within her chest. One late afternoon, Eleanor wandered into the Old Town Library, a quiet sanctuary she had frequented often in her youth. Dust motes danced gently in the fading sunlight streaming through tall windows, casting long golden shadows across worn wooden floors. She wandered the aisles slowly, fingers brushing softly over the familiar spines of novels she'd once cherished. As Eleanor rounded a corner, her heart stilled softly upon seeing Henry sitting quietly at a small table, absorbed in an old history book. He glanced up almost instinctively, their eyes locking gently across the quiet space. A soft, uncertain smile flickered on his lips as he quietly motioned for her to join him. She hesitated, pulse fluttering nervously, before gently taking a seat opposite him. The silence stretched delicately between them until Henry quietly broke it, his voice filled with quiet nostalgia. "We spent so many afternoons here, didn't we?" Eleanor nodded softly, smiling faintly. "It was always easier to lose myself in books than face reality." Henry's eyes softened gently. "I felt the same. Books were simpler, safer." Their quiet gazes lingered briefly, both recognizing the unspoken truths woven carefully beneath their words. Henry finally broke their gaze, gently closing the book before him. "Ellie, I'm glad you returned my journal." Reading those words again, it reminded me just how much we've always left unsaid. Eleanor's breath caught softly, heart tightening, quietly. "Maybe we were both too cautious. I think we missed many chances, Henry." He nodded slowly, regret shadowing his features gently. "Life kept moving forward, but sometimes I wonder if I truly did." Eleanor studied him gently, compassion softening her expression. "We both chose safety over risk. Perhaps it was enough then. But lately, I've wondered if safety has kept us from truly living." Henry considered her words quietly, a gentle vulnerability appearing in his expression. "Ellie, are you happy? Truly happy?" She paused thoughtfully, voice gentle but honest. "I'm not unhappy, but there's a difference between contentment and happiness, isn't there?" He sighed softly, a tender smile crossing his lips. "Exactly." They sat quietly, absorbing the gentle truth between them. Henry eventually reached gently across the table, covering her hand with his own, his touch soft and familiar. Eleanor's heart fluttered quietly, warmth flooding her gently at the intimacy of the moment. "I've always cared deeply for you, Ellie," Henry whispered softly, voice almost hesitant. "No matter where life took us, that never changed." Her eyes shimmered gently, vulnerability evident in her voice. "Nor for me, Henry. You've always mattered more than you'll ever know." The quiet acknowledgement between them felt bittersweet, their connection undeniable yet forever changed by time. Henry gently withdrew his hand, clearing his throat softly. "Promise you'll come to the wedding?" Eleanor nodded gently, a quiet resolve settling into her heart. "Of course. I'll always support you." In the days following their quiet exchange, Eleanor moved gently through Small Harbor, revisiting places that held special significance. She visited the small chapel where Henry's wedding would take place, standing quietly at the back as soft sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting gentle patterns of color upon polished pews. She imagined Henry standing at the altar, promising himself to someone else, and felt a quiet ache deepening gently within her heart. One evening, as the wedding drew nearer, Eleanor invited Lucy and Grace to her small cottage. They sat gently by the fireplace, sharing quiet laughter and gentle reminiscing. Grace finally broke the comfortable silence, her eyes wise and gentle. "Eleanor, have you decided if you'll tell Henry how you truly feel?" Eleanor hesitated softly, heart fluttering gently. "I've wrestled quietly with that, but now I'm certain. I need to speak, even if only once. Not to disrupt his life, but to finally be honest with myself." Lucy nodded encouragingly, squeezing Eleanor's hand gently. "Then speak from your heart. He deserves to know, and so do you." The night before Henry's wedding arrived quietly, stars shining softly in the velvet sky above Small Harbor. Eleanor sat gently at her desk, pen poised, softly over delicate stationery. Her heart beat gently, yet determinedly, as she carefully began writing a letter she'd composed silently countless times over the years. "Dear Henry, there are words I've carried quietly for too long, words I've rehearsed silently, always afraid to speak them aloud. For years you've been my closest friend, my quiet strength, and my greatest regret. I've loved you quietly, carefully guarding my heart, never daring to risk losing the precious bond we shared. I watched you grow, find happiness, and quietly supported you, content with what I could have. Yet tomorrow, as you stand before Anna, promising forever, I want you to know this simple truth. I loved you, Henry, deeply and completely, though I never spoke it aloud, and though our paths now diverge forever, I'll carry this quiet love gently, grateful it existed at all." Her heart trembled softly as she folded the letter gently, slipping it carefully into an envelope. Eleanor held it, close to her heart, closing her eyes gently, feeling a quiet peace settle within her. She finally felt ready to let go, quietly accepting that honesty was enough, even if nothing changed. The day of the wedding dawned gently, sunlight warm and comforting. Eleanor dressed carefully, heart quietly resolute. She slipped the letter gently into her small purse, determined to deliver it discreetly, allowing Henry the choice to read or set it aside quietly. As guests gathered softly in the chapel, Eleanor entered quietly, heart beating gently yet steadily. She sat near the back, observing quietly, emotions tender but controlled. Henry appeared quietly at the altar, calm yet vulnerable, awaiting his bride. Their eyes met gently across the crowded room, understanding passing silently between them, warm and profound. As the ceremony began, Eleanor quietly slipped the letter to Lucy, whispering gently, "Give this to him later." Quietly. Lucy nodded understandingly, eyes soft with empathy. Eleanor's heart settled gently, finally allowing herself to release the quiet weight she'd carried for years. As vows were softly spoken, Eleanor felt quiet tears gently fill her eyes, not of sorrow, but gentle acceptance. The quiet strength she'd found in finally speaking her truth brought tender relief, her heart free at last from the burden of unspoken words. She slipped quietly from the chapel before the ceremony concluded, walking gently through sunlit streets towards the harbor, heart quietly hopeful yet tenderly sad. Eleanor paused gently, gazing quietly at the sea, finally whispering aloud the words she'd carried silently for 15 years. I loved you, Henry. Quietly, gently, and always. After leaving the library, Eleanor wandered thoughtfully down to the shoreline, where small waves gently lapped against the weathered pier, the rhythm steady yet comforting. She wrapped her sweater tighter around her shoulders, the soft evening chill beginning to settle quietly. The harbor lights reflected gently on the water's surface, shimmering softly, mirroring the emotions gently stirring within her heart. Eleanor recalled countless evenings spent here beside Henry, quiet conversations about dreams, fears, and whispered laughter that felt both endless and fleeting. She wondered softly if Henry remembered these moments as vividly as she did. Had they become shadows within his memory, gently fading with each passing day, or did they remain quietly cherished as they did for her? The uncertainty gnawed gently, persistently within her chest, impossible to ignore. As Eleanor gazed quietly, out at the horizon, footsteps approached softly behind her, interrupting her reverie. Turning, she recognized Anna, Henry's fiancée, approaching hesitantly. Eleanor's breath stilled softly, her heart momentarily uncertain, yet she managed. A gentle smile of greeting. "Eleanor," Anna began quietly, her voice gentle and sincere. "I hope I'm not disturbing you, but I wanted to talk." Eleanor nodded softly, silently signaling Anna to join her. They stood quietly side by side for a moment, the gentle waves filling the silence between them, until Anna finally spoke again, voice careful yet open. "I've noticed Henry has seemed restless lately," Anna confessed gently, eyes fixed softly on the water. "He hasn't said much, but I sense something weighs quietly upon him. I thought perhaps you might know why." Eleanor's heart quickened softly, uncertain how much to reveal. She hesitated, finally responding with gentle honesty. "Henry and I share many memories, Anna. Sometimes the past has a gentle way of reminding us of things left unsaid." Anna considered this quietly, her voice soft and understanding, without bitterness. "I've always admired the closeness between you both. Yet, I also wondered quietly if friendship was all it ever was." Eleanor turned, gently meeting Anna's quiet gaze. "I've carried quiet feelings for Henry," she admitted softly. "Feelings I never shared openly because I valued our friendship too greatly. Yet, I assure you, my intentions aren't to disrupt his happiness." Anna smiled faintly, her expression gentle, empathetic. "I believe you, Eleanor. Truthfully, I suspected this long ago. But I also know Henry loves you dearly. As his closest friend, someone irreplaceable. Whatever else existed quietly between you, it never changed his heart." The honesty and quiet understanding from Anna warmed Eleanor's heart gently, easing the quiet ache within her. They stood together in thoughtful silence, each recognizing a quiet strength in the other, both connected by a love they shared, though differently. The day before the wedding, Eleanor found herself again in the comfort of her cottage, thoughtfully preparing Henry's letter. This quiet ritual felt both painful and liberating, as if finally speaking her silent truths might gently heal her lingering wounds. She carefully penned each word, allowing honesty and tenderness to guide her, expressing gratitude for the quiet love she had carried for so long. Finishing the letter, Eleanor slipped it gently into the envelope, breathing deeply to steady her nerves. She knew she must deliver it discreetly, without burdening Henry on his wedding day, yet determined to free herself gently from the silence she had kept for years. On the wedding day, Eleanor dressed quietly, heart gently resolute. As she approached the chapel, memories enveloped her softly, of laughter, whispered secrets, and quiet, unspoken hopes. Inside, guests gathered softly, their gentle murmurs filling the air. Eleanor sat quietly at the back, heart beating tenderly, as Henry appeared at the altar, composed yet vulnerably open. Their eyes met briefly, gentle recognition passing silently between them, a quiet, mutual acknowledgement of all they'd shared and all they'd silently lost. Before leaving the ceremony discreetly, Eleanor handed the sealed envelope to Lucy, murmuring, softly, "Give this to him quietly, after everything concludes." Outside, Eleanor breathed deeply, heart gently aching yet somehow lighter. She walked slowly toward the harbor once more, finding comfort in the gentle, familiar sights and sounds, the quiet murmurs of waves, the distant cries of gulls, and the gentle breeze carrying scents of salt and nostalgia. Standing at the pier's edge, Eleanor quietly whispered into the evening air, words she'd long carried in her heart. I loved you, Henry. Quietly, completely, always. Tears blurred softly in her eyes, not from sorrow alone, but gentle acceptance. Suddenly, footsteps echoed quietly behind her once more. Turning, her heart stilled gently upon seeing Henry standing silently at the end of the pier, letter clutched, softly in his hand, eyes shimmering with quiet emotion. Eleanor, Henry whispered gently, stepping slowly toward her, voice tender and uncertain. Your letter. Every word spoke straight to my heart. Her heart quickened softly, vulnerable yet open. I needed you to finally know, Henry. Not to change. Anything, just to find peace. Henry stepped closer, gently taking her hand in his own. Ellie, our timing was never right, but please know, I loved you quietly too, for all these years. Standing together quietly in that tender moment, Eleanor felt gentle relief flood her heart, the quiet weight she'd carried finally easing. They shared a gentle, bittersweet smile, hearts quietly acknowledging what they'd silently known for so long. Although nothing could change their quiet past, this moment offered gentle closure, quietly allowing them both to finally breathe free. And in that quiet, profound moment, Eleanor realized deeply how she'd longed for Henry to hold her, especially during the quiet ache of losing her mother. Eleanor stood frozen in quiet astonishment, heart gently trembling as she took in Henry's soft, emotional words. The gentle sea breeze brushed past them tenderly, ruffling her hair slightly as she struggled silently to grasp the truth he had quietly revealed. Their quiet acknowledgement, after years of gentle avoidance, now lay raw and open between them. You loved me? She finally whispered, her voice barely audible, disbelief mingling softly with a fragile hope she hadn't dared allow herself. Henry met her eyes tenderly, stepping closer until they stood barely inches apart. Always, he breathed quietly, sincerity shining gently from his eyes. From the moment I first saw you, Ellie, I've carried you quietly in my heart, but I always feared losing you as my closest friend. So silence felt safer. Eleanor's breath shook softly, tears gently pooling as she whispered, I did the same. I feared risking our friendship. And now? He reached out, softly brushing, a stray tear from her cheek. We've spent years quietly living a half-truth, Eleanor, never fully honest about what lay between us. Yet, now. He paused gently, conflicted emotion evident in his quiet expression. Anna awaits me, believing I offer her my whole heart. But standing here now, I wonder quietly if I ever truly could. Eleanor's chest tightened painfully, heart aching softly with gentle empathy. Henry, she whispered tenderly, voice trembling gently. You can't second-guess now. Anna is good, gentle, and she loves you deeply. He nodded quietly, gaze troubled yet gentle. She deserves everything. But Ellie, I can't stop myself wondering softly what might have happened had we spoken sooner. She closed her eyes, gently, a quiet sigh escaping her lips. Maybe we'd be together now, or maybe we'd have ruined everything. Perhaps we chose the only path we knew how to walk gently. Henry studied her quietly, vulnerability evident as his voice softened. Eleanor, tell me honestly now. Do you regret the silence we kept? She considered thoughtfully, gently shaking her head. I don't regret our friendship, Henry. I cherished every quiet moment we shared. Yet, yes, a part of me quietly regrets never finding courage sooner. They stood quietly in mutual understanding, hearts gently exposed in the fading sunlight. Finally, Henry stepped back gently, expression soft, yet resolute. I must go, but Ellie, your letter, your honesty, they've quietly opened something within me I can't easily close again. Eleanor nodded softly, understanding gently. Please, Henry, go to Anna with honesty. She deserves nothing less. He gave her one last gentle, lingering look before turning slowly, footsteps quietly fading as he disappeared into the gathering dusk. Eleanor remained standing softly at the pier's edge, the gentle waves murmuring comfortingly beneath her feet. Her heart quietly throbbed, both lighter and heavier than ever before. The day of Henry's wedding finally arrived, draped in gentle sunshine and a delicate breeze carrying scents of blooming lilacs. Eleanor dressed quietly, her heart beating steadily yet vulnerably. Entering the chapel felt surreal, each gentle greeting from familiar faces a quiet reminder of her hidden truths, now gently exposed. She found her seat at the back, heart fluttering quietly as soft music filled the intimate space. Henry stood at the altar, composed yet visibly shaken, glancing anxiously toward the doors. Eleanor felt a quiet pang, imagining his gentle turmoil. Then Anna appeared, radiant and serene, walking softly down the aisle toward Henry, love evident in her gentle smile. Eleanor watched quietly, feeling a bittersweet ache within her chest. Henry reached gently for Anna's hands, his gaze tender yet subtly conflicted. Eleanor's heart stilled quietly, suddenly sensing a gentle unease, as vows began softly. Henry's voice trembled slightly. Eleanor recognized subtle hesitation in his gentle speech. The chapel held its collective breath, sensing quietly that something profound was about to unfold. Anna squeezed his hand reassuringly, whispering softly, "Henry, it's all right." Henry shook his head gently, voice thick with quiet emotion. "Anna, please forgive me. Standing here now, I realize gently I haven't been completely honest." The chapel murmured softly, uncertainty rippling quietly through those gathered. Eleanor's heart quickened gently, eyes wide with quiet dread and hope. Henry inhaled deeply, steadying himself quietly before speaking. "Anna, you've given me unconditional love, patience, kindness. You deserve nothing less in return, but my heart, quietly and deeply, has long been divided." He turned quietly toward the guests, eyes softly searching until they found Eleanor's gentle, anxious gaze. The quiet chapel seemed suspended in fragile silence, as Henry whispered gently, yet audibly, "Eleanor, Ellie, you've quietly held my heart for years, in ways I never dared admit aloud. Our quiet silence has brought us here, and now I must finally speak the truth." Gasps softly punctuated the stunned silence, eyes quietly turning toward Eleanor, whose cheeks flushed softly under sudden attention. Anna, eyes gentle yet quietly sorrowful, followed Henry's gaze, understanding dawning softly on her features. Henry stepped toward Eleanor slowly, voice quiet yet resolute. "Ellie, I don't ask anything from you now, but I couldn't stand here today without finally acknowledging quietly what my heart has long whispered, that you, Eleanor Reynolds, have always been my quiet love, even when silence seemed safer." Eleanor's heart raced quietly, mind spinning, gently in disbelief. She felt tears spilling softly down her cheeks, unable to find words, quietly overwhelmed by Henry's gentle, courageous admission. Anna quietly approached her, gently touching her shoulder in silent understanding, whispering softly, "It's all right, Eleanor. He deserves to speak his truth." Eleanor rose shakily, heart trembling softly as she faced Henry. "Henry," she whispered gently, voice raw with quiet honesty, "your courage humbles me. But please don't abandon your future lightly." Henry smiled faintly, tenderness in his quiet eyes. "Ellie, my future has quietly and always been tied to you, even when I tried to convince myself otherwise. I couldn't vow forever today without finally facing this gentle truth openly. Eleanor felt the weight of every gaze gently upon her, heart vulnerably open, uncertain how to proceed. Yet deep within, she recognized a quiet, gentle strength guiding her forward. She stepped closer slowly, looking gently into Henry's eyes, whispering softly, "Then let's no longer hide behind silence, Henry. Whatever path we walk now, let it be honest." Henry reached gently, intertwining his fingers softly with hers. Their quiet gaze held gently, a lifetime of silent truths finally acknowledged openly. The chapel watched quietly, respectfully silent as two hearts, long quietly held apart, now gently joined in honest vulnerability. Yet, as Eleanor looked into Henry's quiet, vulnerable eyes, reality softly whispered that their courage, though beautiful, carried consequences gently unseen, quietly unknown. She squeezed Henry's hand gently, silently wondering, could honesty alone gently heal years of quiet ache? Or had they gently uncovered wounds that might never fully mend? In the quiet stillness following Henry's gentle confession, the small chapel seemed suspended in a timeless hush. The faint murmur of whispered questions rippled gently through the gathered guests, their uncertain gazes shifting softly between Henry, Eleanor, and Anna. Eleanor stood frozen beside Henry, her heart quietly trembling as the weight of his honesty settled heavily upon her. The warmth of Henry's fingers intertwined gently with hers felt both comforting and terrifying, proof that this moment was real, irreversible. Anna stood nearby, her graceful composure never wavering, though quiet pain softened the corners of her usually serene expression. Her eyes, filled with quiet dignity, met Eleanor's across the small distance separating them. In that quiet exchange, Eleanor saw no anger or resentment, only gentle sadness mingled with unexpected understanding. Finally, Anna spoke softly, voice gentle yet resolute. "Henry," she murmured, stepping closer with quiet composure, "I've known you for years, loved you deeply, trusted you fully. And I understand now your heart has never fully been mine. Perhaps it was never truly available. Thank you for finally sharing your truth." Henry swallowed softly, remorse shadowing his gentle expression. "Anna, please forgive me," he whispered gently. "My silence wasn't fair to you, nor to Eleanor." Anna smiled faintly, a quiet tenderness in her eyes. Perhaps silence seemed kinder, at first. But honesty, however painful, is always gentler in the end. "I can accept losing you, Henry, but only if it's to your honest heart." Anna stepped quietly back, allowing Henry and Eleanor a moment of privacy within the gently watching crowd. Henry exhaled slowly, turning fully toward Eleanor, whose eyes shimmered softly with unshed tears. "Ellie," he murmured softly, regret heavy yet gentle in his tone. "I never meant to hurt Anna. Or you." Eleanor shook her head gently, quiet compassion softening her expression. "We've all been quietly hurting, Henry, carrying these burdens for too long. But now, finally, we've faced them openly." Henry nodded slowly, thoughtful sadness deepening gently in his expression. "I've always feared honesty, Ellie. Yet now, the relief feels quietly overwhelming." Eleanor felt quiet warmth bloom softly within her chest, despite the painful complexity of their situation. "We chose silence because we feared losing the closeness we already had. But maybe silence cost us more than honesty ever would have." Henry touched her cheek gently, his thumb softly brushing away a lingering tear. "Ellie, do you think we can ever reclaim the years we've quietly lost?" She met his gaze tenderly, her heart softly breaking even as it healed gently with each honest word exchanged. "We can't reclaim what's gone, Henry, but perhaps we can finally learn from it. Move forward." Openly, however uncertainly, around them, guests quietly began dispersing, sensing softly that this intimate moment belonged only to the hearts gently involved. Grace approached slowly, touching Eleanor's shoulder reassuringly. "Come," she whispered gently. "Let's step outside. You all need space to breathe." Outside the chapel, beneath gently swaying trees and the fading afternoon sun, Eleanor drew in a deep breath, heart fluttering softly yet steadily. Grace squeezed her hand gently, speaking quietly yet firmly. "Eleanor, what happened in there took courage from all of you. Now don't run from it." Henry emerged quietly from the chapel, Anna walking softly beside him, their quiet conversation respectful, gentle, and deeply sincere. Eleanor watched softly, heart aching tenderly for them both, knowing Henry's honesty had opened a path he couldn't simply abandon. Anna approached Eleanor softly, eyes quietly compassionate. "Eleanor," she murmured gently, "I won't pretend. This isn't painful. But please promise me you'll honor this honesty, regardless of what it brings. Too many hearts live in quiet denial." Eleanor nodded gently, sincerity shimmering softly in her gaze. "Anna, you've shown extraordinary grace today. I promise to treat this gift of honesty with the respect it deserves." Anna smiled softly, a quiet sadness lingering gently behind her gracious expression. "I genuinely wish you both happiness, Eleanor, whatever form it takes." As Anna departed quietly, Henry turned gently toward Eleanor, eyes filled softly with gentle vulnerability. "Ellie, the courage we've found today changes everything. But now what?" Eleanor inhaled softly, gazing quietly at Henry, understanding fully that their courage brought not only freedom but uncertainty. "Henry, I don't know exactly where we go from here. All I know is that living honestly now feels gentler than any future built on quiet denial." Henry stepped closer, voice gently hesitant, yet quietly hopeful. "Then perhaps we simply begin again, Ellie. Honestly, carefully, gently. No more secrets or silences." She smiled faintly, warmth filling her softly at the sincerity in his gentle proposal. "A new start feels quietly right, Henry. Even if our steps forward must be cautious." He took her hand softly, their fingers intertwining once more, the quiet strength of honesty holding them gently together. "No matter what lies ahead, Ellie, let's promise to always speak our truths, even when silence seems safer." Eleanor squeezed his hand tenderly, her voice softly resolute. "I promise, Henry." No more silence. Standing quietly together in the fading sunlight, Eleanor felt a gentle peace beginning to settle within her heart, quiet and profound. Their courage had been costly, painful, yet now, finally, their paths were free of hidden shadows. Whatever came next would be faced openly, honestly, gently. As they quietly left the chapel grounds together, the gentle town of Small Harbor seemed softly changed, more alive, more vivid. Their honesty had breathed gentle life into memories long held in quiet suspension, and the future ahead, though uncertain, shimmered softly with new possibilities. Later that evening, Eleanor sat quietly at the pier, the gentle moonlight reflecting softly upon calm waters. Henry joined her silently, both quietly absorbing the events of the day. Neither spoke immediately, allowing gentle silence to settle comfortably between them, no longer burdened by secrets. Finally, Henry spoke softly, his voice gentle, thoughtful. "Today was the hardest day of my life, Ellie. Yet somehow I feel quietly free." She nodded slowly, feeling precisely the gentle liberation he described. "Honesty was painful but necessary. We've quietly paid a heavy price for our fears." Henry met her gaze softly, sincerity deep in his gentle eyes. "I won't regret it. Not if honesty brings us both closer to genuine happiness, however complicated." Eleanor smiled faintly, leaning her head gently upon his shoulder. Together they sat quietly, watching moonlit waves ripple gently, feeling a quiet connection deeper and stronger than ever before. Yet deep inside, Eleanor understood softly that courage and honesty were only beginnings. Ahead lay quiet decisions, delicate adjustments, and gentle acknowledgments of wounds needing healing. She understood, gently and profoundly, that while honesty freed them from past regrets, the journey ahead required equal measures of compassion and patience. Turning softly toward Henry, Eleanor whispered gently, "Whatever comes next, Henry, let's promise to face it with gentle honesty and courage, always." He held her closer gently, voice quiet, yet deeply resolute. "Always, Ellie. No more hiding." And in that gentle, quiet moment beneath the vast moonlit sky, Eleanor felt deeply, softly certain that their lives, once quietly fractured by silence, had finally begun to heal. And in the tender quietness beneath the moonlight, Eleanor finally understood how deeply silence had shaped her love, and how honesty was quietly reshaping it now. The quiet euphoria Eleanor had briefly felt beneath the moonlight soon faded into the stark, gentle reality of Small Harbor after the wedding. As days softly passed, Eleanor found herself increasingly isolated, quietly aware that the honesty she and Henry had courageously embraced had changed the fabric of their small community forever. Friends and neighbors, though gentle and polite, subtly distanced themselves, uncertain how to navigate the delicate emotional terrain left in the wake of Henry's disrupted wedding. Eleanor spent more time alone, each passing day gently accentuating the quiet void she had unintentionally created. The cozy bookstore that had long felt comforting now seemed gently foreign, each soft chime of the entry bell ringing hollowly, amplifying her solitude. The customers who once lingered warmly now hurriedly chose their books and departed quietly, eyes carefully averted, reluctant to engage in conversation that might touch upon recent events. At home, silence expanded softly, filling every quiet corner of her small cottage. Eleanor moved gently through rooms that suddenly felt cavernous, painfully aware of every small sound. A clock quietly ticking, floorboards creaking softly beneath her careful footsteps, even the gentle hum of the refrigerator echoing in the stillness. One evening, after closing the bookstore early due to the unsettling quietness, Eleanor sat alone in her dimly lit living room. Shadows danced gently upon walls painted in soft, muted colors, creating patterns that shifted subtly with the setting sun. The quiet tick-tock of the antique clock her mother had left her resonated clearly in the silence, each second passing softly yet painfully, echoing gently through her heart. She glanced toward the empty chair opposite hers, feeling a gentle yet profound sadness envelop her heart. It was the chair Henry had often occupied, where he'd laughed quietly over shared memories or silently listened as she spoke about her dreams. Now, the emptiness of that chair felt poignant, quietly symbolic of all they'd gained through honesty, and all they'd lost in its aftermath. Eleanor's heart softly ached as she reached for the old journal, Henry's journal, left quietly on her coffee table. Her fingers brushed its worn cover tenderly, tracing faded edges as she opened it gently, rereading softly penned words she'd nearly memorized. Ellie's laughter fills rooms, hearts, souls. If I could capture it, I'd carry it always. Her eyes, blurred softly with tears, the gentle ache of regret and loss intensifying quietly within her chest. Had their honesty, though noble and necessary, cost too much? Had speaking the truth gently fractured relationships beyond repair? Closing the journal gently, Eleanor rose quietly, moving toward the window, pulling curtains aside slightly to peer into the softly darkening evening. Lights gently flickered on in nearby houses, their comforting glow highlighting families gathered together, softly unaware of the quiet loneliness she felt. Her mind wandered gently toward Anna, feeling quiet remorse for the pain their honesty had inflicted upon the woman whose only crime had been to love Henry openly. Eleanor knew Anna would carry her own quiet scars, wounds gently inflicted by truths she hadn't anticipated. That quiet awareness deepened Eleanor's sadness softly, filling her heart with gentle self-reproach. Eleanor slowly turned from the window, heart heavy yet resolved to carry quietly the consequences of their courage. She moved silently through her cottage, each quiet step echoing softly in rooms now gently tinged with regretful solitude. She paused softly at her mother's photograph, tenderly tracing the image of a woman whose quiet strength she desperately wished to inherit fully. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered gently, voice filled softly with quiet vulnerability. "You always taught me courage and honesty, but now I'm unsure if this honesty was wise." Her quiet apology lingered softly, unanswered in the gentle emptiness of the cottage. She moved toward her bedroom, quietly dimming lights, surrendering gently to shadows that matched her quietly reflective mood. Eleanor sat slowly on the edge of her bed, heart aching softly yet deeply, wondering gently if the cost of finally speaking their quiet truth had simply been too high. As the soft ticking of the distant clock continued gently, Eleanor lay back, slowly, eyes gazing upward into gentle darkness, feeling quietly overwhelmed by the profound solitude honesty had brought her. Sleep eluded Eleanor gently that night, her mind softly racing through memories both cherished and regretful. She lay silently, eyes wide open, tracing faint patterns on the ceiling cast gently by the moonlight, filtering through sheer curtains. Each quiet breath seemed heavier, filled softly with an inescapable awareness of choices made and consequences quietly borne. She turned restlessly, heart fluttering softly as memories whispered gently through the quiet darkness. The warmth of Henry's hand in hers, Anna's quietly dignified response, Grace's gentle compassion, Lucy's soft reassurance. Each face, each gentle word lingered quietly, blending into a tender tapestry of gratitude mingled with gentle remorse. As dawn approached softly, pale light gently illuminating the edges of her window, Eleanor rose quietly, heart weary, yet restless. She moved gently toward her small kitchen, the familiar routine of brewing coffee offering quiet comfort in the lingering solitude. Each movement felt carefully slow, deliberate, quietly burdened by unseen weight. Standing quietly by the kitchen window, Eleanor sipped her coffee slowly, watching as the quiet town of Small Harbor stirred gently to life beneath the morning's first golden light. The rhythmic ticking of the antique clock, ever present in its soft insistence, felt subtly louder now, counting gentle seconds of an uncertain future stretching quietly before her. She wondered softly if honesty, though courageous, always carried quietly unintended costs. Perhaps silence had shielded them from precisely this: quiet alienation, gentle loneliness, relationships quietly strained beneath the weight of too much honesty too quickly revealed. Eleanor moved slowly toward the living room, heart softly, aching as her gaze settled upon the empty chair again, its gentle vacancy starkly symbolic of her current isolation. Sitting gently, she drew her knees to her chest, wrapping arms around herself as if to quietly comfort the heartache softly pulsing through her. Her eyes drifted slowly to the small collection of framed photographs on the shelf, moments quietly preserved in time. Among them was a faded snapshot of her mother, smiling gently, eyes quietly wise and compassionate. Eleanor reached gently, taking the frame softly into her hands, studying the image closely, longing for the quiet strength and gentle guidance her mother had always offered. "You always knew what to say," she whispered softly, voice trembling gently with quiet emotion. "But what would you tell me now? Have I made a terrible mistake?" Her quiet question hung softly in the empty air, unanswered, but deeply felt. Eleanor placed the photograph gently back onto the shelf, heart heavy with quiet doubt. She closed her eyes gently, breathing deeply, softly searching inwardly for the quiet reassurance she desperately needed. Slowly, Eleanor stood, moving carefully toward the bookshelf nearby, fingers trailing gently along worn spines of familiar novels. She selected one softly, an old favorite, hoping its quiet familiarity might bring gentle comfort. Yet, as she opened it, gently, a folded paper fluttered silently to the floor, settling softly near her feet. Heart quickening gently, Eleanor reached slowly, unfolding it with trembling fingers. Her breath caught softly as she recognized Henry's familiar handwriting, carefully penned in quiet secrecy years earlier. "Ellie, if you ever find this, know one quiet truth. I've always loved you deeply. No matter where life takes us, this gentle honesty remains my heart's truest whisper. Yours always, Henry." Tears spilled gently down Eleanor's cheeks, softly blurring the words. Her quiet heart ached profoundly, knowing now with gentle certainty that despite everything, their courage to speak honestly had been essential, no matter the gentle consequences. Yet understanding softly mingled with quiet sadness, realizing honesty's gentle toll had fractured her world in ways unforeseen. Relationships built on quiet years of trust and subtle affection were now gently strained, uncertain if healing was possible. Henry's letter, gentle and deeply sincere, brought comfort yet underscored her quiet isolation sharply. Eleanor carefully folded the note, placing it gently back into the book, pressing it softly against her chest, heart quietly heavy yet grateful. Moving slowly toward the window, she gazed softly outward, sunlight gently warming her face, quietly determined to carry forward with gentle strength. She knew deeply and softly that this moment of profound loneliness, though painful, was quietly necessary, a tender reminder that honesty, however gently wielded, held the quiet power to reshape lives entirely. Eleanor breathed deeply, accepting gently the solitude she now inhabited, determined softly to face each quiet consequence with dignity, courage, and gentle grace. As the morning sun rose quietly higher, bathing Small Harbor in gentle golden warmth, Eleanor stood resolutely, quietly accepting her solitude as part of the delicate, heartbreaking yet beautiful price of finally living openly, honestly, and with gentle courage. In the quiet weeks following Henry's disrupted wedding and Eleanor's quiet confession to herself, life in Small Harbor began gently returning to something resembling normalcy. Yet beneath the surface calm, Eleanor still felt quietly suspended between acceptance and loss, solitude and clarity, unsure if her quiet honesty had truly brought resolution or merely gentle heartbreak. One soft afternoon, Eleanor busied herself, reorganizing her bookstore, hoping gentle routines might ease lingering heartache. Sunlight streamed softly through lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across wooden floors and rows of beloved books. As she reached gently for a high shelf, a small dusty envelope fluttered softly down, landing quietly at her feet. Eleanor's breath caught gently as she recognized the handwriting instantly. It was Anna's. The envelope was yellowed slightly, with age, clearly forgotten long ago. Eleanor knelt slowly, heart fluttering quietly as she opened it gently, revealing neatly folded paper inside. Unfolding it carefully, she began reading quietly, breath hitching softly at Anna's delicate words. "Eleanor, if you're finding this now, perhaps fate believes it's finally the right time. Years ago, when Henry first spoke to me about marriage, he made a quiet confession, one he feared sharing openly with you. Though he deeply cared for me, Henry's heart always quietly belonged elsewhere. I understood immediately, seeing clearly the quiet way he looked at you whenever he believed himself unseen. He spoke gently, candidly, confessing that although he loved me, he had always quietly loved you far more profoundly, deeply. Yet, Eleanor, Henry believed his love burdened you, that it was unwanted, an intrusion upon your friendship. So he chose quietly to shield you, convinced silence was his kindest act of love toward you. Eleanor paused gently, heart pounding softly, feeling her breath quicken quietly with disbelief. She reread the words carefully, absorbing the quiet. Revelation. Henry's silence had never been cowardice but gentle sacrifice, an act quietly meant to protect her. Her heart softly twisted, realizing the quiet misunderstanding that had shadowed their relationship for years. Anna's gentle script continued. I loved Henry sincerely, Eleanor, yet his heart was never truly mine. Knowing this, quietly pained me, yet also freed me. I believed deeply in honesty, yet knew this gentle truth belonged only to you both. So I promised myself quietly that one day, perhaps, you'd learn this gentle truth at a moment destined solely for you. Whatever your heart chooses now, Eleanor, know Henry's love for you has always been quietly selfless, profound, and genuine. Eleanor's eyes blurred softly with gentle tears, her heart tenderly aching as Anna's quiet revelation unraveled, softly within her. For years, Eleanor had quietly assumed Henry's silence was born from fear or uncertainty. Yet now, this quiet letter revealed his silence as an act of profound love, quietly sacrificing his happiness for what he mistakenly believed was Eleanor's own comfort. She folded the letter gently, heart trembling softly with renewed understanding. She rose quietly, moving gently to the small bench by the bookstore window, sinking softly onto its cushioned seat. Through gentle tears, she gazed thoughtfully outward, feeling quietly overwhelmed by this subtle yet monumental shift in understanding. Henry's gentle silence, which she'd interpreted quietly as cautious hesitance, had in fact been deeply courageous, quietly selfless. Eleanor felt gentle remorse at having misunderstood him so profoundly. The quiet pain she'd carried, believing herself silently rejected, now gently transformed into tender recognition of Henry's quiet bravery and profound compassion. Soft sunlight warmed Eleanor's cheeks gently as she sat quietly, absorbing this delicate yet powerful revelation. Her quiet heart filled slowly with gentle gratitude toward Anna, whose quiet strength and selfless honesty now gently illuminated truths long hidden. Eleanor realized softly that genuine love, though quiet, sometimes expressed itself most deeply in gentle sacrifice, careful silence, and hidden courage. A gentle knock at the bookstore door startled Eleanor quietly from her reverie. Turning softly, she saw Grace standing quietly, concern gentle in her wise gaze. Eleanor carefully tucked the letter away, moving gently to open the door. Grace's eyes studied Eleanor quietly, yet intently. Are you all right, Eleanor? You look quietly unsettled. Eleanor nodded softly, eyes shimmering gently with newfound understanding. Grace, she murmured tenderly, voice quietly trembling. I've just discovered something quietly powerful, gently hidden for years. Grace smiled faintly, understanding gently reflected in her wise eyes. Then perhaps it's quietly time you finally allowed your heart to accept the gentle truths waiting patiently for you. Eleanor squeezed Grace's hand gently, heart quietly hopeful yet vulnerable. Yes, Grace. Perhaps gentle truths are finally ready to be fully known. After Grace gently left, Eleanor remained quietly at the window, thoughts softly drifting back through years of gentle misunderstandings, subtle gestures, and quiet misinterpretations. She held Anna's letter delicately, fingers tracing the faded handwriting as though touch alone could gently anchor her to this new understanding. Her heart, now quietly reshaped by gentle revelations, began softly forgiving years of silence she'd mistakenly resented. Quietly determined to honor this newfound truth, Eleanor carefully folded the letter again, placing it gently inside her pocket. She rose slowly, her gaze falling softly on the familiar streets outside. The late afternoon sun warmed the cobblestone streets gently, casting soft shadows of townspeople quietly moving through their daily routines, unaware of the quiet revolution unfolding softly within her heart. Eleanor left the bookstore quietly, stepping softly onto the street, feeling the gentle breeze brush her skin like a tender whisper of encouragement. With each careful step toward Henry's house, her heart fluttered quietly, courage gently building with each breath. Arriving at Henry's cottage, she paused softly outside, heart trembling gently. The familiar house appeared quiet, its windows softly illuminated by the warm, gentle glow of the approaching sunset. She stepped forward slowly, knocking softly, pulse quickening gently in anticipation. Henry opened the door cautiously, surprise gently brightening his eyes when he saw Eleanor, standing quietly on his porch. His expression quickly softened into gentle warmth, stepping aside to quietly invite her in. They moved silently into the familiar living room, settling gently on the old, comfortable sofa that held years of quiet conversations and shared secrets. "Henry," Eleanor began softly, voice trembling gently yet steady with newfound clarity. "I found something today. Something Anna quietly left for me years ago, hidden gently among my books." Henry's eyes widened slightly. Curiosity mingled softly with gentle apprehension. "What was it, Ellie?" Eleanor slowly unfolded the letter, placing it gently into his hands. Henry read quietly, his expression shifting gently from confusion to understanding, then to quiet astonishment. When he finally looked up, eyes shimmering softly with emotion, his voice trembled gently. She knew all along?" "Yes," Eleanor murmured softly, eyes gently searching his face. "She quietly protected our truth, believing someday we might find courage enough to face it openly." Henry gently lowered his gaze, the gentle weight of years quietly visible in his posture. "I never wanted you to carry the burden of my love, Ellie. I chose silence quietly, hoping it was kinder. But perhaps I was wrong." "You were wrong, Henry," Eleanor gently whispered, reaching softly to touch his hand. "Your silence was generous, but it quietly wounded us both. I believed you never felt deeply enough to risk more." Henry squeezed her hand gently, voice quietly thick with remorse. "I always felt deeply, Ellie, more deeply than I ever let you see." Eleanor's heart softened gently, her voice tender and filled with quiet reassurance. "I know now, Henry. Anna's letter helped me understand that your silence was never weakness. It was quiet courage, gentle sacrifice, love in its most selfless form." Henry's eyes glistened softly with gentle tears, gratitude and relief, mingling quietly within them. "Ellie, can you forgive me for the gentle hurt my silence caused you?" Eleanor smiled softly, eyes shimmering gently, warmth filling her voice. "There's nothing to forgive, Henry. Only gentle lessons to carry forward." Henry gently drew her into a soft embrace, their quiet breaths mingling tenderly, hearts finally acknowledging openly what had quietly lived between them for so long. Eleanor rested gently against him, feeling years of quiet misunderstanding gently dissolve within this newfound truth. "We've lost so much time, Ellie," Henry whispered gently against her hair. "But perhaps this quiet revelation can offer us something new. Honesty, openness, a quiet path forward." Eleanor nodded softly, pulling back gently to meet his gaze. "No more silence, Henry. We'll honor Anna's quiet courage by living honestly, openly, fully. No matter how gently uncertain our future may be." Henry brushed her cheek tenderly, quiet determination shining gently in his eyes. "Then let's begin, Ellie, today. Quietly, slowly, but together." As they sat, quietly, gentle twilight softly settling around them, Eleanor finally felt profound peace within her heart. Years of quiet loneliness, hidden truths, and gentle misinterpretations now gave way to hopeful clarity, openness, and tender possibility. Stepping softly outside together later, Eleanor lifted her eyes gently toward the vast, star-strewn sky. "Henry," she whispered softly, heart tenderly full, "I think Anna knew something quietly important. That truth, though painful, gently frees us in ways silence never could." He squeezed her hand gently, his voice warm, tender, and quietly sincere. "Anna was quietly wiser than any of us realized. And you, Ellie, you've taught me gently today that true courage means facing truths openly, even those quietly hidden, for years." Together, under the quiet blanket of stars, Eleanor and Henry gently walked forward, hearts finally unburdened, ready to embrace a future softly illuminated by honesty, courage, and gentle, enduring love. Have you ever discovered a quiet truth that changed your story completely? Share your gentle revelations below, and let your heart speak openly. In the gentle months following their quiet revelations, Eleanor and Henry learned softly how to navigate the tender balance between friendship and deeper, unspoken truths. The initial rush of honesty gradually settled into something quietly profound, neither fully romantic nor purely platonic, but a gentle bond uniquely their own. They met often, shared softly whispered conversations, quietly exploring feelings they'd previously hidden. Yet beneath these delicate moments, both knew quietly that their chance for a traditional, uncomplicated love had gently passed. Small Harbor slowly returned to its peaceful rhythms, and Eleanor's bookstore regained its warmth, becoming once again a gentle sanctuary for stories both fictional and real. Customers returned quietly, their initial awkwardness softening over time into gentle normalcy. Eleanor felt deeply grateful for this quiet healing, aware she'd quietly reshaped her place within this community she dearly loved. One gentle autumn afternoon, Eleanor walked slowly along the shoreline, golden leaves whispering softly underfoot, the sea murmuring gently nearby. The crisp air carried subtle scents of salt and wood smoke, comforting yet bittersweet. Henry joined her quietly, footsteps familiar beside her own, their comfortable silence speaking volumes about the quiet understanding they'd reached. They paused softly, gazing toward the endless horizon, watching gentle waves lap softly against the shore. Eleanor drew a quiet breath, turning softly toward Henry. "Do you ever wonder quietly if things could have been different, Henry? If we'd known earlier?" Henry's eyes softened gently. Thoughtful sadness mingled with quiet peace. "Every day, Ellie. But perhaps our quiet journey brought us precisely here, teaching us gently to appreciate what we've quietly gained, rather than mourn what we've softly lost." Eleanor nodded gently, warmth filling her heart quietly. "You're right, Henry. Perhaps our gentle honesty gave us a deeper understanding, a friendship quietly richer than we might ever have known otherwise." He reached gently, taking her hand softly within his own. They stood silently together, allowing the gentle breeze to whisper softly around them, carrying away quiet regrets and leaving behind tender acceptance. As autumn deepened quietly into winter, Eleanor learned softly the gentle art of acceptance, not resignation, but quiet peace in knowing some loves were destined to remain quietly incomplete, yet deeply meaningful. She found gentle solace in her days at the bookstore, cherishing quiet evenings spent writing in journals, capturing feelings too gentle, too complex for spoken words. Henry quietly rebuilt his friendship with Anna, gentle respect and understanding, slowly restoring their bond, though it now took a different, quietly supportive form. Eleanor admired their quiet maturity. Grateful, Henry and Anna found gentle ways to heal their hearts without bitterness or resentment. Eleanor and Henry continued their quiet friendship, careful yet open, each encounter gently reaffirming the unique connection quietly forged from shared honesty and quiet courage. They understood softly that life had gently moved them past the possibility of uncomplicated romance, yet their quiet bond remained steadfastly special, filled softly with unspoken understanding and gentle affection. One quiet evening, as snow fell softly over Small Harbor, Eleanor sat comfortably in her bookstore, sipping tea and quietly watching snowflakes gently drift past the warmly glowing windows. Henry appeared quietly in the doorway, smiling gently as he shook snow softly from his coat, the quiet comfort of familiarity reflected in his eyes. "I thought I might find you here," he murmured gently, voice softly affectionate. "Always," Eleanor replied quietly, warmth filling her voice. "Where else would I be?" He moved gently to join her, sitting softly in the familiar chair opposite hers, quiet companionship settling warmly between them. They spoke gently, sharing quiet thoughts about life, love, dreams softly reshaped by experiences and gentle acceptance. Henry eventually rose slowly, preparing quietly to leave, pausing gently at the door. "Ellie," he whispered softly, eyes reflecting quiet sincerity, "I want you to know this truth deeply. I wouldn't trade our quiet honesty for anything, even though it brought pain. Your gentle courage has taught me deeply about love's quietest strength." Eleanor smiled tenderly, feeling her heart soften gently. "Nor would I trade it, Henry. Your quiet love taught me that some of life's greatest truths exist gently, within silence and sacrifice." Henry nodded softly, stepping quietly into the snowy night, leaving Eleanor gazing thoughtfully into the gentle, silent snowfall, feeling deeply at peace. In the gentle months and quiet years that followed, Eleanor slowly learned the tender art of embracing life's quiet complexities. She continued her days softly tending to her bookstore, the gentle rhythm of her life moving slowly forward, shaped by the quiet strength she'd discovered through her experiences with Henry, the profound honesty they had shared, though quietly painful at first, had gently guided her toward a deeper, richer understanding of love and friendship. She found gentle joy in simple, everyday moments, the comforting crackle of logs softly burning in her fireplace, the quiet scent of old books filling her store each morning, gentle conversations with Grace over tea in the cozy cafe. Her life quietly flourished, not with grand romantic gestures or dramatic reunions, but through the quiet beauty found in acceptance and contentment. Henry remained gently present in her life, their bond evolving softly into something quietly irreplaceable. They no longer carried the quiet weight of unspoken truths, nor the burdens of gentle misunderstanding. Instead, their friendship became quietly precious, built carefully upon mutual respect, quiet honesty, and gentle acceptance of what could and could not be. Eleanor sometimes visited the shoreline alone, quietly reflecting upon the past with gentle nostalgia rather than aching sadness. She remembered softly the way Henry had held her hand that day on the pier, the gentle sincerity in Anna's letter, Grace's quiet wisdom, and the tender support Lucy had always offered. Each memory gently shaped her heart into something quietly resilient, compassionate, and deeply understanding. On one such evening, as twilight gently enveloped Small Harbor, Eleanor paused softly at the edge of the pier, gazing quietly out over the water. The gentle ripples danced softly beneath the fading daylight, shimmering quietly with delicate beauty. Her heart felt gently full, not with longing for something lost, but with quiet gratitude for all she'd gained through gentle loss and honest courage. "Ellie," came a quiet voice behind her, warm and familiar. She turned softly, smiling gently as Henry approached, his eyes reflecting quiet warmth. "You always know exactly where to find me." He nodded gently, joining her quietly, standing side by side, their gazes tenderly directed toward the horizon. "Some things never change, Ellie," he murmured softly, voice gentle with quiet affection. "And some things do," she replied, quietly, her voice softly reflective. But perhaps those changes quietly teach us how to love better, more honestly, more gently. Henry's expression softened quietly. Do you think we've learned to love better, Ellie? She considered, softly, gently nodding. I think we've learned to love more truthfully. Sometimes that quietly means letting go. Sometimes it means quietly holding on, but gently, loosely, without expectations. He squeezed her hand softly, quiet gratitude evident in his gentle touch. I'm grateful, Ellie, deeply grateful, that through everything, we've quietly held on to what mattered most. Eleanor looked gently into his eyes, her heart softly content. And what was that, Henry? Our quiet friendship, he whispered softly, voice trembling gently with emotion. Above everything, our quiet friendship mattered most, she nodded tenderly, smiling gently. Always, Henry. Above all. As gentle darkness slowly settled over Small Harbor, Eleanor felt quiet peace envelop her softly. She knew now, deeply and softly, that their quiet story had not ended tragically, nor happily ever after, but had gently grown into something far richer and more meaningful, a love quietly rooted in honesty, resilience, and tender acceptance. As they quietly parted ways beneath a gentle, starlit sky, Eleanor returned softly to her cottage, heart gently peaceful. Sitting quietly by the window, she opened a journal softly, her pen gliding quietly across blank pages, capturing gentle thoughts born from a lifetime of quiet lessons in love, friendship, and courage. She wrote softly, To the friend I secretly loved, though our love never found a traditional storybook ending, perhaps its quiet depth and gentle honesty gave us something far more profound. Perhaps love, at its quietest and most authentic, is found not in grand gestures or declarations, but in tender acceptance, careful sacrifices, and quiet truths softly spoken. And perhaps this gentle, honest love is the most beautiful kind of all. Eleanor closed the journal softly, eyes gently reflecting quiet contentment. As she gazed softly into the night, she whispered gently to herself, feeling profoundly grateful. Thank you, Henry, for quietly teaching me love's truest form. If you've enjoyed this gentle journey of quiet love, honest truths, and tender courage, please consider subscribing. Your support gently encourages more stories of second chances, quiet strength, and love's softly spoken truths. And if you've quietly held your own story close, share it gently below. We're here to listen. Eleanor turned off the lights softly, slipping quietly into peaceful sleep, heart gently filled with quiet hope, knowing deeply that the quiet love she'd held silently within her heart had quietly become her life's most beautiful story.